Few 1970s era cars were as bold and as daring as the 1976 to 1979 Cadillac Seville. Born when Cadillac dealers and General Motors saw that Mercedes was starting to make significant inroads on the West Coast, the 1976 to 79 Seville ended up being one of the great successes of Cadillac during this time period. While today the car might seem highly conventional, it was anything but when it was introduced. Remember that Cadillacs during this time stood for vehicles that were large, and large because their price was expensive. The Seville bucked that trend by making the most expensive Cadillac a small car. And expensive it was. When introduced partway through the 1975 calendar year as a 1976 model, the Seville retailed for $12,479 base price. By comparison, a DeVille's base price was about $8,600, and the Fleetwood Brougham, which rode atop a 133-inch wheelbase, almost 20 inches longer than the Seville's 114.3-inch wheelbase, retailed for $10,414. Despite its relatively small size, Cadillac did not scrimp on standard and optional creature comforts that buyers could order or came with the vehicle as included in its base price. These included everything from power windows, door locks, seats, to cruise control, automatic climate control, delay wipers, even AM/FM CB radios and 8-track tape players. Interior themes also mimicked larger Cadillacs, with the IP having a distinct resemblance to the more standard-sized Cadillacs, and the interior appointments also having a similar feel. In the powertrain department, the Seville did buck the trend of Cadillac vehicles having Cadillac-exclusive powertrains. In this case, the vehicle was powered by an Oldsmobile 350 cubic inch engine that was topped with a Cadillac-exclusive fuel injection system that was developed by Bosch in conjunction with AC Rochester. This computer-controlled port fuel injection system was highly advanced for the time and was arguably even more advanced than later fuel injection systems that Cadillac would introduce in the early 1980s, like the digital fuel injection included in the HT4100 engines. While the engine was at least somewhat unique and the interior appointments highly luxurious, they hid more humble origins for the Seville's underpinnings, namely that the car was based on the Chevrolet Nova platform and thus included leaf spring rear suspension as well as subframes front and rear as opposed to a complete perimeter frame. This may sound like a recipe for disaster, but in fact it worked quite well, and Cadillac employed numerous techniques including the new for the time fast Fourier analysis, which helped improve chassis tuning and reduce squeaks and rattles. The car also introduced a new styling direction for General Motors, the so-called sheer look. With its sharp creases, little tumble home, and overall simple forms, the car would set a styling trend for General Motors that would be copied not only by other divisions, but also Ford and Chrysler in the years to come, all the way through really the Taurus Sable era that began in 1986. And though the final Seville that emerged from General Motors was unquestionably a hit success, selling often over 50,000 units per year, its gestation period is filled with numerous stories about its overall development. Specifically, that the car really wasn't designed to have this sheer look to begin with, but a very different overall fastback profile as part of the original proposal. It was also originally designed to slot beneath other Cadillacs in the lineup as opposed to being the most expensive Cadillac in the lineup, and was dubbed the LaSalle by Cadillac early on in its development for this reason. In fact, the tale of the Seville's development is perhaps best told by an individual who experienced it and lived through the process firsthand. Thus, I once again present to you Wayne Kady, who served as Cadillac Exterior Studio Chief from 1974 through 1989 to detail more about the Seville and its development. Listen in and enjoy. Okay, well, welcome back to Rare Classic Cars. We're here again with Wayne Kady, Mr. Cadillac Exterior Studio Chief from 1974 to the 1989 model year. So, few authorities on Cadillac that can speak to its design over, a decade plus length, but welcome, Wayne.
Thank you.
And here to talk about a couple different Sevilles. So, Wayne was involved in the early 1976 to 79 Seville proposals before doing the bustleback Seville for the 1980 to 1985 model year. So we thought it would be interesting to talk about both of those, and starting maybe with the 76 generation and how that came about and your involvement before you were transferred to Buick. What were your thoughts, and how did that program really originate?
Okay, after we finished the 71 Eldorado, then we were given a task of designing a small Cadillac. Mercedes was making inroads in the California market with a small Mercedes, and Cadillac was starting to take notice of it. So we were given the task of coming up with a car that Cadillac can sell in that market. And what we had originally done, and we had come up with a fiberglass design with an all-new car. And then Cadillac took illustrations that we made in the studio. We made a series of illustrations that were a three-quarter front, three-quarter rear, and a direct side view, comparing the Mercedes 280 to the Opel Diplomat. And the Opel Diplomat would have been badged as a Cadillac. The only difference is it would have Cadillac emblems on it. And then we did another version with an Opel, but we changed the front clip to have it more of a Cadillac presence in the front. And then it had some taillight changes and some other graphic changes to make it look more Cadillac. And then we had the all-new version with nothing shared. And then Cadillac took these illustrations to 18 different zones around the country, and asked the zones to the managers or the people that were elected to represent the zones, vote on which direction that they would like, and whether it was really viable they can actually sell the car. And that's how all this started. And it turned out that they wanted the car, and they also wanted something that was unique and new and different. So that's where all this started, and we had started that in Advanced Cadillac. And then after we had completed that part of it, then I got transferred to Buick, to the Buick exterior studio. And then the person that took this over was Stan Parker. Stan Parker was my old boss when I first went into Cadillac, when he was given the task to develop the Seville, and that's what ended up as the 76.5 Seville.
Interesting. So this really started life, and Wayne, I will zoom in on these for the viewer so they can see it, but started life, Cadillac was thinking about, do we take an Opel Diplomat even from Europe and either rebadge it, or to your point, give it a different front clip?
Exactly.
And the dealers, one of the shots that's in this portfolio here that Wayne shared actually has the results of the 18 zones, and it's pretty clear they say they want their own exclusive car.
Right, and they also wanted a Cadillac drivetrain, and they wanted, I think they wanted something that was totally Cadillac as far as the mechanicals of the car. And so that's really the background as to how this whole program started. And it was determined that Cadillac would get involved in a smaller Cadillac, but they didn't want to sell it at the bottom end either. They wanted to sell it at the top. The history of the original design that we'd come up with, we were looking at it and calling it a LaSalle. And then as we progressed with the program, then as it got closer to production, they decided to drop the LaSalle name because it had a connotation of a cheap Cadillac, whereas they were going to price this at the top end.
Yeah, so it ended up being priced above even the Fleetwood.
Yes.
And what was the thought there? Originally, was it just that it was a small car, it should be consequently cheaper priced? Then as time went on, they discovered they really wanted to have it compete more with Mercedes at the upper end?
That's right. Yeah, the argument that some people at Cadillac had was that the people that really wanted a smaller car. Of course, there are a lot of people that just can't change. Change is really hard for them. They perceived a Cadillac as just a big boat, and like I said earlier, it got so big that it wouldn't even fit in some garages. So they had to address that. But there are some people that were arguing on the small side, saying that you could have a watch, that tells time that costs you thousands of dollars, and you can have just a regular clock that tells you the same time for just a few bucks.
That's an interesting
So
argument.
that was the rationale. And others argued that if you had a pool, swimming pool or house with swimming pool, the bigger the pool, the more.
Right.
But then I guess that argument didn't go too far.
Well, it's appropriate for the nautical ride, I guess,
Right,
that they had,
exactly,
right?
yeah,
The swimming pool.
Yeah.
It's funny you said, too, that they really wanted Cadillac drivetrain. And in the end, the Seville ended up with an Olds V8 with, I think, Bosch fuel injection.
It did, that's right.
So a little bit different.
Mm-hmm. But I don't remember if Cadillac had a small enough V8 back then, and that might have been the reason. 350 cubic inch.
You're correct. They didn't have their big block was really a physically large block.
Correct.
And I think in the Nova platform that it ended up using, I mean, I owned a 79 Seville diesel, and the 350 cubic inch engine physically in that bay is tight. And I can't imagine if you were to have an engine with a taller deck, and it would have been too much. But what's interesting to me is you have, a very elegant and modern proposal that's the exclusive Cadillac proposal here with kind of a fastback design, very clean sides.
Yeah, it was trying to be unique and different. It's still back then it was probably maybe a stretch to go that far back then. But if you look at cars today, there's a lot of fastback cars. And very little deck space. The proportions, changed over time, and I think, what you accept, I think, takes time with certain things. A car's a product, and if you've seen it for a while, then after a while you get used to it, and either you like it or you don't. It's just, I think, the nature of design.
So was that you wanted it to be more avant-garde, more modern, and to your point, this fastback profile is in vogue now. Let's call it almost 45, 50 years later.
Right.
So you were just 45, 50 years too early, I guess, right?
Yeah, you can always overshoot the target. It's like if you're hunting, and if you lead, if you're hunting birds and the bird's flying over, you lead it too much, you're gonna miss. And that's kind of a parallel to what you can do with car design. You can be too far out and you completely miss the target.
So the car, you had this fastback, I'll call it, proposal, and then it rotated toward once you departed and Stan Parker came in, who was the chief designer on the 67 Eldorado, I think,
right?
Correct?
That's correct.
And so he put in a very formal vertical. Was that, kind of a reaction to...
I don't know what his thinking was because I wasn't a part of that. I was busy in the Buick studio. And my guess was that he didn't have a clean slate to do an all-new car, so he had to work with what he had. And I think it came off the Nova.
It did.
Or a good portion of it came off of the Chevrolet Nova. And I would imagine a cowl is something he had to hold. And there's probably some undercarriage that he had to hold and maybe a floorboard and things like that. That's no reason that you couldn't get different designs through the side and into the profile. But I don't know all the things that led up to how the car ended up, but I think he did a very good job, and it sold well for Cadillac. I inherited that car when I came back to Cadillac, and I was newly put back into Cadillac as that car was being introduced. I think it was introduced as a 75 and a half or 70.
That's right, early 76
Right.
model year, yeah.
And it was a costly car for a smaller Cadillac. I think the price was probably higher on the Seville than it was on the DeVille or the
It was.
Fleetwood.
It was the most expensive of the DeVille Fleetwood, and I think the base price in that early model year 75 was almost $12,500,
Yeah,
which was,
right.
to your point, the DeVille was in the mid-tens
Yes.
ish. So,
But it sold very well, and it did target the market that they're going after, and it was very successful. In fact, so successful that I think some of our own GM cousins that weren't doing so well started to copy it.
so that's an interesting story there, because it was, to your point, it was really a home run for a small car, something that was unconventional at the time.
It was.
And ended up selling many years, over 50,000 units
That's
over
right.
its lifetime, being at the premium price. Effectively, like you said, a stretched Nova. I think 114-inch wheelbase. The Nova was 110.
Right.
But to your point, I guess was it so successful that then that design, that sheer look, as it was called, permeated the building? And
Right.
what was the thought at the time of that?
Well, Mitchell was the vice president, and he kind of took some of that thinking, I think, and he had to take it to the A-body platform, because the A-bodies had come out with that fast profile, and I think they bombed in the market, and that's a big profit for the corporation. I don't think they could afford to lose that kind of volume. So they took some of the sheer look off of the 76 and a half Seville and added that to the look of their cars. And I think some of the competitors did the same thing. There was a Granada, I think, and
That's right.
And I'm not sure if a Chrysler product, but I recall a lot of cars looking similar to the Seville, and for a lot less cost. So we had to do something different for the next generation, and that's when I inherited the program to.
So that's an interesting point, though.
Second version.
You have the Seville sets the tone of this sheer look styling, so much so that the A-body GM vehicles, like the Cutlass Salon, that have that hatchback look but aren't really hatchbacks, they then presumably reused all the doors and the glass and the windshield, but graphed on this formal roofline.
That's right.
On the rear end that changes the look to kind of emulate the Seville. And then I think to your point as well, Ford comes out with the Granada and having those ads comparing it to the Mercedes at a sixth of the cost, which I don't know that anybody put those two in the same. We'll leave that aside. But and then Chrysler had, to your point, the R bodies. I think it was the New Yorker, they actually called it the New Yorker Fifth Avenue, even that stayed around just for a short period of time, that were quite angular.
You're probably right.
They
Even though you're a bean counter, you're probably right.
Can you repeat that one more time?
So, in that you're a bean counter, he's probably right.
That I know that took a lot out of you to say that, but I know you've deflated sitting in the chair.
I probably won't sleep for a week.
But it's a fascinating story. So you have the dealers really want this unique proposal, and you gave them a unique proposal. Then the car, probably seriously for some cost reasons, goes on the Nova platform. And to your point, Stan Parker probably had to share a number of those key elements.
Right.
The car changes shape, initiates that sheer look that then pervades throughout the design community. And then you re-inherited it ahead of the Elegante versions, right, for 78 that came out?
That's right. Anytime through the duration of a product, we try to freshen them up and to kind of boost sales, especially if it's going to be changed. And I think 78 and 79, we came, I'm not sure whether it was 78 or 79, it came out, that Elegante version. And we added a molding close, just below the belt line. And we two-toned the car. We had two two-tone combinations. One of them was black and a silver, and I don't remember what the names were. But, and the other one was Canyon Rock, I think. And
yes, yeah, and Plum Fire Mist or something. I can't remember.
Yeah, it was a nice combination. But those were the only two, and we added real wire wheels to it. And then
that's right.
There's some probably interior trim changes.
They were. They had perforated leather seats as opposed to the standard leather, and they had the center console that you got that opened, and
I think there's a little writing tablet. And,
there was
some kind of a special pen.
There was. Yeah, it was a pretty different interior because they changed the leather style, and they had the center console, kind of a la Fleetwood Talisman, big center console from before, and then, like you said, there were two different tones to the Elegante. No vinyl roof either on it.
No, there wasn't. Stan Parker was the guy that, but it came out originally with a vinyl roof on everything. So we took the vinyl roof off for the Elegante, and then we made that as, I think, standard. So if you wanted a vinyl roof, then that was option, I think. You know, I'm trying to remember back quite a few years. I've aged a little bit since then. I know you haven't.
I've aged since then too, for sure. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's been so we're on the same journey there together. But it's that's interesting that you added the molding, because that was something that you also did on the '76 Biarritz Eldorado too, in a different location, right? On the hood.
That came off of the belt line, extended onto the hood, and then we had a half top. And I think if you're talking about the Eldorado Biarritz.
Yes.
Okay, we made about 1,700 of those, and they were all the same color, same combination. But we did that over at a place called ASC, and that was owned by Heinz Prechter, and he used to be the guy that you can go to and for low volume can get a different look. And he had an engineering division, and he was capable of doing things fairly fast.
So you used him for that?
We used him for that. In fact, I went over to his place and we laid it out. And then, of course, I had to bring it back and show it to Mitchell. Mitchell had to approve it. And if he didn't approve it, you know, he'd be on my case. Not only that, he'd be on my butt.
He was somewhat aggressive, was he not, your boss during those years?
He was in charge, and he commanded respect, and I had a lot of respect for the guy. I really did. I never seemed to have the problem that some designers had with him. And I don't know why. Maybe it's because I wasn't afraid of him. And I guess sometimes if you're afraid of a person, like this guy, then you're
quite afraid of me sitting here, probably. This proximate, right? I'm sure your skin's just crawling. You know, the finance guy is.
It is. You know, I'm looking for an exit right now.
You're trapped by the wall, thankfully. You're stuck here for the viewers. So be thankful he's here. Yeah. He doesn't get the seat close to the door.
Yeah, but Mitchell didn't want any design to be done out of the building. He really protected designers in that respect. In fact, I can recall an instance when I was in Buick that he damn near got into fisticuffs with the general manager of Buick over a design that he loved, but then Buick didn't want. but that's another story.
I think that's another story.
That's another story.
Wayne's got lots of stories. Like I said, when you have the chief designer for Cadillac and Buick who's got decades of history, we could probably do, a whole week's worth of video here, right?
Well, I don't know if I could hold out that long.
Fair enough. Well, we could do it over a period of, different sessions. So you come back and you do the Elegante versions, and then those are very successful. And the overall car kind of concludes as a very successful, seminal vehicle, kind of setting the tone for GM styling until almost that Taurus Sable era in the 80s, kind of a little bit.
Yeah, I would say, with no absolute certainty, but yeah, Cadillac. I think Cadillac was kind of the target for a lot of the products that, the Cadillac of this or the Cadillac of that.
Right.
And if you want to, like Mitchell used to say, if you're going to rob, don't rob from a grocery store, the corner grocery store. Go rob a bank.
Yeah, sure.
So if Cadillac was in the bank, or if the Cadillac was the bank, then that's the thing back then too. Was that Cadillac had? I'll use the grille texture as a. And this goes back. I shouldn't say goes back. It probably comes forward a little bit. And Cadillac used to have grills that were horizontal blades and vertical blades, and they would be put into a fixture and then staked together. And nobody else can afford that except high-end cars. Chevrolet would have a grill that looked similar, but it would be pressed out of either stainless steel or aluminum or some other, and it wouldn't have the depth that a Cadillac would have. So those are the kind of things that really distinguished Cadillac. But then as you got into plastic grills, then you can have the same, depth of perception of a part as Cadillac.
Yeah, plastic's a great thing, right?
In fact, I think in 1980 we went to plastic because, and the reason we went to plastic was not only because it was less expensive, but it also didn't rattle. The other grills, when they were staked together like that, when they stake them together, they put it on a fixture and then it's pressed, and then sometimes if it didn't really seat that well, then you would get rattles. Now if you look at a 58, 59, 60 Cadillac front grille, they had horizontal and vertical blades, and then they had a bomb in the middle. Okay, that bomb, all that had to be staked together. So if you had a rattle, how do you find it?
How do you fix it? Or well, that's interesting. I know. Well, what you do, Wayne, is you just make the diesel engine standard, and then you don't have to worry about the grill rattling.
Yeah, that's right.
Can't quite discern it over the din of the motor.
The valves.
Well, very good. So I think we'll take a quick break, and then we'll come back and discuss the Bustleback Seville, the successor to the 76 to 79, which Wayne was the chief designer for and really had been working on since the late 60s.
That's right.
Design as a proposal. So come back and you'll hear more about that one. Thanks for watching this video on the 76 to 79 Seville's development with Wayne Kady. Hope you enjoyed. If you did, please like, comment, and subscribe. And also feel free to hit the super thanks button, which is the heart-shaped icon with the $ in it at the bottom right of your video browser. Until the next interview with Wayne, which will highlight his time designing the Bustleback, click the video thumbnails at bottom left and right. And if you're not yet subscribed, what are you waiting for? Where else are you going to get this kind of content? Click the circular icon with the 67 Buick Riviera at the top left, then hit the bell to ensure you're notified of all my future videos. Thanks again for watching. Until next time, take care.